6:02. And I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. And if everyone could stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a moment of silence. 6:02.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Matthey,
Here.
Councilmember Bolin. Councilmember Motney. Here. Councilmember Emig,
Present.
Councilmember Becker,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Crable,
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler,
Here.
Mayor Millawamble.
Here. Next item on the agenda is recognition and appointment, and we have a proclamation recognizing Welcome Week for September 10th through 19th, 2021, as requested by the Administration Department. And I know Councilmember Bolin has been working on this quite a bit, but I'm just going to read the proclamation. I understand you have some comments to make a little later, correct? Thank you. Whereas our community's success depends on making sure that all residents, visitors feel welcome here. Today, new residents are part of our vital community, bringing fresh perspectives and new ideas, starting businesses and contributing to the vibrant diversity that we all value. And whereas this week, we honor the spirit of unity that is bringing neighbors together across the nation. During Welcome Week, I invite all residents of Bloomington, Illinois, to join this movement of communities nationwide by renewing our commitment to our core American values and by taking action in the spirit of welcoming. By working together, we can achieve greater prosperity and make our community the kind of place where diverse people from around the world feel valued and want to put down roots. And whereas, regardless of where we are born or what we look like, we are united in our efforts to build a stronger community. By recognizing the contributions that we all make to create a vibrant culture and a growing economy, we make our community more prosperous and more inclusive to all who call it home. And whereas, let us come together to build communities where every resident has the opportunity to contribute at his or her best. Let us come together to create more prosperous communities and to reaffirm that our nation still stands as a beacon of freedom and opportunity. And now, therefore, I, Mboka Mulambwe, Mayor of Bloomington, Illinois, do hereby proclaim September 10th through 19th, 2021 to be Welcoming Week and call upon each of us to join together to build a more cohesive community. Thank you. Okay, so next item on the agenda. Now, next item on the agenda is recognition of appointments to various boards and commissions. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Donna Bolin, appointed to the McLean County Behavioral Health Coordinating Council. Councilmember Jamie Matthey, Bloomington Normal Area Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations, both of you. Next item on the agenda is public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody present who would like to make a public comment or virtually?
We do. We'll actually first start with remote public comment, if that's okay.
Sure.
And we have John Reed on the line.
Okay.
John, you are muted. If you could press *6 to unmute, we'll be ready for your public comment.
Before you do that, let me read my statement.
There you go.
Sorry about
Perfect.
that. That's probably what he was waiting for. Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the city council. It is also an opportunity for the city council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time ceased. Thank you. Maybe we're ready for John now.
All right. John is actually not unmuted but he is present in the meeting. So we'll just move on and we'll circle back to him at the end.
Sounds
That's
good.
okay. If we could have Matthew Tosco come forward, please.
Hello, I'm Matt Tosco, and I'm speaking today as a member of the Bloomington Normal Club of the Communist Party USA and the No Ameren Shutoffs Coalition, of which we're a member, in support of city staff requesting a moratorium on utility shutoffs. Given that statistics show a rise in COVID-19 cases when a moratorium is not in place, and that we do not know how bad the pandemic is going to get, especially right now on the cusp of flu season and the autumn-winter holiday seasons, I think said moratorium should extend through the end of March next year, not just through the end of September as proposed. The well-being of our residents should be paramount in this council's decision-making, and a utility shutoff moratorium is a common sense, proactive measure you can take to satisfy that obligation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Thank you,
Next-
Matthew.
Next up, we have Tina Sipula.
Hello, my name is Tina Sipula, and I live with my husband, Bob Sampson, at 403 Grant Road in Eastgate. I'd like to thank all of you for not only listening to those of us who had our homes ruined by the floodwaters in late June, but I'd like to thank you for working to help alleviate and rectify the sewer problem so it does not happen again. None of us can control the weather or climate, but you do have the power to allocate monies and can negotiate timeframes for projects. For several months now, we have heard many dates for the completion of the Locust Colton project, and all of them are years from now. We are asking for this project to start as soon as possible in our area. As long as we have to live with this antiquated sewer system, we live in fear and our lives are on hold. Whenever there is a prediction of rain, panic starts to set in, not only in our house, but throughout our whole neighborhood, throughout the whole west side, throughout the whole town. When it rains at night, we do not sleep. We cannot go see our grandson on the East Coast because it might rain and our home may flood again. I cannot go help my sister to take care of her husband after his surgery because a storm may come. We cannot leave our home. We had over $15,000 worth of damage to our home due to this flood, and the insurance did not cover all of it. And then our insurance company told us, if we make another claim, we will be dropped, even though this is the only claim we've ever made. And we cannot afford the overhead sewer program. We are hoping you can expedite the Locust Colton project help those on the west side so we can begin to live normal lives again without fear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tina. Next.
Next up would be Scott Steimling.
Scott Steimling, Ward 5. My concern is the rain that we had in late June I live right at the bottom of a steep hill. It came right down that hill and flooded the street. You could not get through. And with the lousy single-use storm inlets, there was no place for the water to go. I've been after the city and after them and after them to please put a 4-inch inlet beside that 4-inch inlet. Why rip it out and put an 8-inch inlet in there? And this right in front of my house and across the road. It comes down Fleetwood Drive. There's a place for it to go. You don't, and there's no place for it to go. I know people's houses that have been flooded in my area. And, you know, this is absolutely unforgivable of the city. I guess they don't have the money. They've got the money to do everything that they want to do, but they don't have the money to put in the lousy infrastructure. And I did over $1,000 of damage with another car by hitting a lousy pothole on the city of Bloomington Street. And I pointed that out and pointed out nothing was done. I hope something is done now before we have another 100-year reign. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Next.
Next up, we have Tim Foley.
Good evening. Thank you, council, for having me here today, allowing me to speak on behalf of my neighborhood. I'd like to read you a couple things here. I went around to our neighborhood and collected over 100 signatures and had conversations with my neighbors and realized the widespread decimation that we all received in our neighborhood. And I'm here tonight to represent those people the best I can and to provide you with our petition that we signed along with this letter. As you are all well aware, the volume of rain we received June 25th and June 26th brought severe devastation and damage to certain areas of the city. Our neighborhood and adjoining neighborhoods were especially impacted in Ward 1. Now that this event is unfolded, we residents are now caught in a very precarious situation for how to move forward with respect to the quality of life, securing our personal health, and making wise investment decisions now looming threat that exists over us. First off, I can assure you this is not a 100-year reign. In my conversations with my neighbors, many of which are long-term residents here since the 70s and 80s, this has been a chronic issue in our area. A major incident involving rain and sewage backup happened in '81. A more medium-sized event occurred a few years ago in 2019, and this now major new one in 2021. Due to our geological surroundings and the fact that we sit in a lower elevation plane, the current sewer infrastructure is incapable of handling the excess runoff pouring in from the railroad to our west and from the developing neighborhoods that surround us that are up on higher ground. When heavy rains fall, the water surge flows downstream into our area where it bottoms out. And as the one gentleman pointed out, it has nowhere to go. This overwhelms the sewer system and causes raw sewage to back up through basement floor drains and toilets. Not only does the surface runoff produce destruction to streets, yards, and outer foundation walls, but the raw sewage backflow ruins everything it comes in contact with in our basements and produces health hazards to the homeowner. The economic blow to homeowners is severe. I myself lost $25,000, and I'm about in the medium spectrum of the conversations that I had with my neighbors, ranging up to 50,000. Between coverage conflicts with insurance providers, price gouging from cleanup services, and major losses in assets and property damage.
Thank you. Can you wrap up?
Furnaces, water heaters, washers, dryers, dehumidifiers, displaced and cracked foundation walls and
Okay,
floors.
I'm gonna
We
ask
are
you to,
financially decimated.
thank
These
you.
are the
Thank
core
you.
necessities
Your time is
required
up,
to
sir.
function within a home and happen to be the most expensive to replace.
Tim, thank you.
Thank you. Can I give you these copies?
Sure. It's okay. Who's next?
Next up will be Mary Gordon.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to me. I'm Mary Gordon. I had a meeting with the mayor. Thank you, Mayor, for listening to me. I appreciated it. You were very nice. I appreciate you having me come in. My comment is, it's not 100-year reign. It's happened 3 times in my lifetime. I lived in that house for 53 years. This is the 3rd time I've lost everything. It's not going to be the last time because it keeps happening and nobody is doing anything about it. Not one darn thing. I'm sick of it. I'm tired of repairing and fixing things. This time, it cracked my basement floors. It cracked my basement walls. I just had them fixed 2.5 years ago. I'm 77 years old. I'm going backwards instead of frontwards. I'm really disgusted with it. I've lost $11,000 with things I shouldn't have had repaired. 2 years ago, I just put a brand new dehumidifier in my basement, a water heater, I'm sorry. My insurance company is not going to pay for another thing. I'm really disgusted. Every time it rains, I cry. You don't understand how bad it is. We live on this Ward 1. Nobody comes over there and checks anything. Don't give me another retention basin. All they do is flood out. I've lived there 53 years. I've complained and complained and complained. I'm tired of the people sitting at the desk, pushing pencils and not coming out and looking and helping us. Do you realize what it's like? No, you don't, because you don't have to repair your stuff. We do. I'm telling you right now, I can't keep it up. I go every week to do blood and to have my heart checked. I'm too old to do this now. It's too much on older people. We keep our houses up. We work hard. We pay our taxes. We try to fix our places up. We need help. We're not getting it, people. We've tried and tried. This happened in 81. They rode a canoe down that street. It happened 17 years after that. This time it was so bad. The sound in that basement was horrific that I couldn't hardly run up my steps. It was so bad. I had crap clear up to here. I want to tell you something. It's bad enough to clean feces from something else, but to clean feces from the city of Bloomington is not what I want to do. Okay?
Thank you. Mary.
Please help us.
Thank you. Next.
Next up, we have Mary Cramp.
Mary Cramp.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. Again, it's regarding the June 25th rain. And it's also in regard to the last item on the agenda regarding the acceleration of the Locust Colton project. I live in the Eastgate subdivision and our home was affected with sewage about 6.5 inches, not once, but twice. And anyway, I also want to point out that in past meetings, it has been suggested that the city offer targeted relief to individual homeowners who have complained of damage from flooding. The value of the Locust Colton project, on the other hand, is that it is directed to the improvement of sewers in a way that engineers have testified will directly or indirectly benefit the wider community. The Locust Colton project cannot be done in any other way than by city planning, engineering, funding, and contracting. It is uniquely oriented to a fundamental function of government, not to remedy individual complaints which may be affected by individual property condition or even whether a complaint was made. Funds used for relief of particular homeowners will dilute the effectiveness of the larger project of sewer improvement for the city and lessen the possibility of effectively accelerating the work that is likely to benefit the greatest part of the community. I urge the city council to support the acceleration of the Locust Colton project. The two previous speakers that we've heard, they are from an entire neighborhood that was affected just as we were. So projects like Locust Colton need to be expanded to benefit other areas of the city that are negatively impacted. Before I leave, I also want to remind our individual city council members that we collected approximately 150 signatures on a petition urging our aldermen to support the acceleration of the Locust Colton project. There is widespread support for this, not just in Eastgate, but throughout Ward 8. We received about 40 signatures from the Oak Ridge homeowners also. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mary. Next.
Next up, we have Gary Lambert.
Good evening. I may be the oldest one here. I'm 78. And kind of following on a couple of the last two speakers, I know there's a number of members of the council who have strongly advocated for providing direct assistance to people who have suffered losses. My only thought is, where do you draw the line? I know over the past few years, there's been a number of people from Ward 1 who have come and spoke in front of this council complaining of the very same issue. Do we go back and reimburse those? How about people who didn't even bother filing a complaint because it was in the pantograph and says, it's no need filing because they're all going to be turned down anyway? Do we open the door up and let those people who have suffered damages but haven't previously reported it? And as several of the people have said, this is an ongoing problem. If you do proceed down that path, are you setting precedent for every future rainfall that comes? Different, no, same topic, different avenue. There's been a number of people on the council that expressed strong support for pursuing multiple projects on sewers at the same time. I believe that we heard a couple meetings ago that the previous study on the sewers recommended that we had hire 10 additional people. Some of those would be engineers, which you need before you can get started. We were also told that the lack of engineers by subcontracting firms has proven to be a detriment in the past. I checked the job board over the weekend. I saw a number of positions there. I didn't see any for any engineers. I suggest that you proceed down the avenue of providing permanent solutions to the city's problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Next.
Thank you. So last up, we have John Reed. He still is present in the meeting. So John, if you could press *6 to unmute. We're ready for your public comment. And he's still muted, so I think it's up to you if you'd like to go ahead and move on or.
Sure. Well, let's give him another chance. John, are you there? Okay, doesn't seem like it. So we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that members of the council would like to have removed? Councilmember Crumpler?
Item K, please.
Okay. Councilmember Boland,
7F.
7F, as in Frank?
Frank.
Okay. Okay. Do we have anybody else? No? Okay, okay, sounds good. All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item 7K and 7F?
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of K and F. Please.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Matthew. Is there a second? Okay,
I'll second.
okay, second by Councilmember. Okay, Emig. Okay, thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk. We are actually doing this online, right?
We are.
Okay,
So
if you'd want to go ahead and vote.
it's always entertaining when we are
Okay.
using new equipment.
Missing a couple.
I checked. I checked the check.
If
Let's
you'll
see.
forgive us, we have a new system, so we're working out the kinks.
And we can even just do roll call if you guys would like
Yeah.
to move that direction.
Where are we? Oh, hey, it's showing up. Do we have everyone or just a few? I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And they're not all displayed still. Only 6 there.
Just two. Did everybody have a good weekend?
Thank you.
For sake of time, do you care if we just do roll call? And the
Well-
one of the reasons I asked too is that I can't control it. Phil is controlling it right now.
Oh, really?
So I
Okay.
can't even help him.
Oh,
but
we
I'll
all
leave
need
it
a
to your
breather
call.
sometimes, right? Okay, all right. Are we good, Phil? You got it? Okay, awesome. Look at that. Just a little patience and it works. Awesome. All right, so there are no nays to announce, right? Okay, awesome. So next item is item 7K, Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes, And I read this ordinance, it seems that this amends the date till September 30th, 2021. And that's barely 2 weeks from now for this, for the shut off that utilities. And I wonder if we ought to err on the side of generosity and consider extending that beyond the end of September. I wonder the end of 2021, if possible, but certainly beyond the next 2 weeks. It just seems to me that they're, based on the fact that the pandemic is still with us, it would behoove City Council, to extend this beyond the end of September.
Are you making a motion or are you looking for discussion?
I'm happy to make a motion, but I wonder if there are others who had any similar thoughts. If there's any discussion.
I would second that.
Okay, Jeff, would you like to comment?
Yes, can you hear me?
Sure.
We did build into this a provision that allows exemptions from the shut off process.
Okay.
So if somebody truly is impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, similar to what's happened with the eviction moratorium on the state level, those shut-offs will, or the moratorium on those shut-offs will continue. So there will be exemptions built into this. So this was designed to allow us to resume the process, but also to take into account situations where somebody truly might not be able to pay their utility bill because of the pandemic. I don't know if that helps, but we did try and address the situation of, trying to be a little bit more sympathetic to that, but also build in some process to allow us to exempt those individuals truly impacted.
Thanks, Jeff. So to be clear, at that date, September 30th, would someone then need to apply for that exemption, or is that automatically?
No, that's right. So the state process has a declaration form that individuals can complete. So we'd probably follow a model like that, some sort of an affidavit, maybe some sort of supporting documentation. There are income thresholds associated with that as well.
Sure.
But if somebody could demonstrate, and this would all be set up by executive order from the city manager, but if somebody could demonstrate that they've got that impact and that, they're not gonna be able to pay their water bill because of the pandemic, then they would be entitled to that exemption.
Okay. All right, with that explanation, I'm willing to withdraw my motion then.
Okay. Well, do you want to make just a motion to approve it as presented?
Yes, I will then follow up by making a motion to approve as stated.
Okay. So is there a second?
I'd be happy to second that.
Okay, second by Councilmember Motney. If you want to go ahead and vote. Are we ready? Okay. We're missing somebody. Councilmember Ward. Okay. All right. What? Okay, awesome. Motion carries, no nays to announce. Next item on the agenda is item 7F. Actually, that was pulled.
Yeah, I basically just want to discuss this a little bit. I know that we already have a contract that we have to sign, or we have signed, so this is tied to the contract and would have to move forward. But I would like some kind of explanation as to what is considered hard costs. It appears that the hard costs are construction related. That would be labor, materials, et cetera. Is that correct? Okay. So then the architect fees would be considered soft. costs? Sorry, Jay.
So good evening. So Donna, soft costs are more of well, I should say the hard costs are the construction, the more physical things. Soft costs are some of the equipments that might be inside the concession stand or items like that. So what we're asking for is to approve the contract with the architects that we've been working with to complete the project. The original contract had a dollar figure in it. If we exceeded 10 million, then we'd have to go back to them. And we already had that number pegged. So that's what we're asking for here is that additional amount so that we can complete the design.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. If the cost of the project goes up, that means the soft costs from the architect will go up
This
7.5%.
this cost is all we should be having to ask for from the architect.
So you're saying that what is it? The 11.7 million will not increase?
So that is the total project budget we have right now. That this additional change order that we're asking for tonight is included in that dollar figure.
Okay, so the 885, well, $886,000 is included in the 11.7?
So where we are right now for a project is we're about 6% over budget with that includes a 7.5% contingency. So if nothing goes wrong, we don't find anything that we didn't expect, we'll be right on budget, maybe even a little under, depending on, and that's our latest estimates going back to July. And we've been making smaller cuts as we've gone along since July. So those costs should be the highest they are in terms of an estimations. Obviously, when we send bids out, we hopefully our estimate is on.
Okay, so the 11.7 includes contingency as well as the architect's increase?
So it is, right now, it is right at, make sure I don't get my numbers confused here. So right now, we're about 800 over, which is 6% total cost.
Okay.
But that includes 7.5% contingency.
Okay. But there is possibility that labor and material going down the line will increase considering, well, we don't know.
We don't
but
know,
There's
right,
a possibility, okay.
Yes, with,
We-
steel, PVC, and concrete costs are high. And obviously, this project has a lot of that.
Okay.
But we
So-
believe those numbers will come down, but again, it's speculation. It's hope.
Well, I guess my point is that if those costs go up for the hard costs, that will automatically, based on the contract with the architect, will automatically increase the cost by 7.5%. Am I understanding that?
It is my understanding that this is the total cost that they'll have. That we do not have any additional costs beyond this change order.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to remind everyone that I voted against the pool, not because I'm against the pool, but because of the, I guess, the fiscal impact and all the financial information that I would like to have had before voting. I know that this will have to go forward because it's directly tied to the contract. So I will make a motion to approve, but I'm not happy.
Okay, sure. Can I get a second? Then after that, we'll go to other questions.
second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Ward. Okay, go ahead, discussion.
So where I come from, I like to simplify things. You budget 10 million. If the costs of materials go up, you find a way to shrink the project to still come in at 10 million. And I think with all the other things we have going on in the city that we need to allocate money to, I wasn't part of that vote, but I find it questionable at best to say, we're just going to keep the project to where it can keep expanding if the costs of our materials go up. So I would propose a different solution, that we go back to the drawing board and we come back and say, how can we bring this project in for 10 so that we don't have to update the architect's fees and we don't have to use that contingency? And in all honesty, I'd like to see us find a way to reduce it, because we need that money in other places. And it's just, with all we're dealing with, I don't do that at home. My costs go up. I don't spend somewhere else to bring it back down because I don't have unlimited money. So is there another option here where we can try and be a little more fiscally responsible rather than just jack up the cost?
There are parts of the project that can be taken out. For example, the skate park and the spray park are isolated enough that they could be taken out of the project. When this was brought to council before a number of you were up here, it was deemed to move forward with those amenities included. That'd be a discussion.
Could we say that those, at least get the information, if we remove those or put those in a later phase 2, where we would be and would we need these additional funds? Could we get information that lets us make an informed decision there?
Jay, let me jump in here real quick and maybe comment to Alderman Becker's question, and maybe even to Alderwoman Boland's question. Right now, with this project, we're still operating within the $11.7 million pledge that we made to the community. A portion of that was the contingency that with the item before council tonight, the majority of that has been eaten up, but we're still under that $11.7 million. To Alderman Becker's questions about the project, we don't know yet what's going to come in from the bids on the construction side of that. And if we find, for a variety of reasons, many things that are beyond our control pre-COVID and the impacts of COVID, that this project is going to be substantially more than the original projection of 11.7 million. So that is 11.7 million. That is definitely a conversation that'll be had with council to hold those costs.
Does that satisfy your question? Okay.
I
Motley.
just had a question. Back in March, in reviewing the discussion that the council had at that time, there seemed to be a tremendous amount of optimism of actually beating the estimated value. It was recorded in the minutes that it was believed that the project would come in under budget. Is there anything else? I think already we were experiencing the challenges with supply chain. The futures on a lot of these commodity construction products was already high, and in fact, in some cases, probably higher than what we even have now. But I'm just wondering if something about the sentiment there changed, or if there's some other information that has come to light.
I don't believe so. The architects have engaged a local contractor to help with the estimations. And as we dive deeper down and get into the specifics, then we know, we're able to get more accurate costs. And these numbers I've provided should be the highest because we have made cuts as we've gone along, knowing that we're right on, we're right there. So to help us, for bids to come in under of where we're at from a budget perspective, or just what we estimate right now. So I don't know if anything has really changed. I mean, some costs have gone up, some have come down. We're still dealing with high costs overall for construction. So I don't think, nothing that I can say specifically that has changed.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Ward.
Since we're expressing our feelings about some of this here, I would be personally quite unhappy if we were to start picking pieces of this project out, particularly those pieces that would seem to benefit people who are lower income. The spray park and the skate park are both aspects of this project that, to my understanding, will not involve people having to pay money to use them. And it would be pretty disappointing for the people of the West Side if those were the two items that were to be picked apart here.
Thank you. Well, seeing no other questions, I think we're ready to vote. Okay. The motion carries, but we do have one nay to announce.
Councilmember Becker.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing for the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report as requested by the Economic and Community Development Department. And we have for the presentation, Melissa Hahn from Director of Economic Development. And the hearing is starting at, is that 6:47? Does that look like it? Okay, that's just 6:47. And I'm going to declare it open. Is there anybody here who would like to make a comment or? Are you aware?
We did not have anyone register.
Okay, sounds good. Then we're going to go ahead and proceed to Ms. Hahn for the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This public hearing tonight is for the 2020 CAPER, or the Consolidated Annual Performance Valuation Report for program year 46, which began May 1, 2020 through April 30th of 2021. I just wanted to take a few minutes and provide a brief overview of some of the activities that have occurred over the past year. As you are aware, this entire program year has been impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. It was difficult to determine appropriate goals related to the CARES funding since we've never allocated resources related to a pandemic response before. So you'll see in the CAPER, there are some percentages that we were way over kind of our projected goal. That's due to the fact that we really didn't know how to set those goals at that time. But overall, our COVID-19 response has been very successful. 86 households have received up to $5,000 in direct aid for rent or mortgage and or utilities assistance. We have also assisted 60 small businesses with small business grants. 100% of those grants awarded to small businesses went to businesses where either the owner or an employee qualified as low income, which is under 80% of the area median income. We were also able to assist 105 individuals through the PATH COVID emergency funding that provided shelter and or aid to prevent homelessness. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic-related construction delays, we did not meet our goal of the 3 homeowner housing units added, but Habitat does currently have 3 sites that are under construction that will be completed this next construction season, or should be completed in 2022. We also did complete 1 demo this year, which will be another future site for Habitat. Under the public facilities and infrastructure, we were able to provide funding for MCCA to complete upgrades to their building for ADA compliance. And the city was also able to make improvements to Evergreen Park, including new accessible playground equipment, benches, and drinking fountain. We were also able to fund a variety of public service activities such as Peace Meals, who served over 26,000 meals to 233 individuals who were extremely low income. The West Bloomington Revitalization Project was able to enroll 198 new members in the tool library and provided 86 beds to low to moderate income families with children through the Bed Blitz program. PATH was also able to assist 257 individuals through their homeless services program, and Recycling for Families provided housewares and home furnishings to 236 residents, all of which 90% were at or below 30% of the area median income. This is just a brief overview and some highlights of the program year. The entire 2020 CAPER can be viewed on the city's website, or a paper copy can be viewed at the hub or at the library. Public comment will begin today. Public comment will be accepted beginning today through Wednesday, September 29th. And comments can be emailed to the city's Economic and Community Development Office or emailed directly to me at mhan@cityblm.org. That's all I have at this time. I'll open it up for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Melissa. Do we have any questions? Oh, okay, Councilmember Ward.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was very informative, and I very much appreciate the good work that you're doing with this. Could you just clarify, given how many of the items that you described are going to individuals and small businesses and so forth, can you talk just a little bit about what the public good in those projects is, and spending that money on for individuals is? What is some of the public good?
So through the different public service activities, as I described, we have an application process where local agencies can apply for assistance for their programs. And so because we're able to help fund those programs, they're able to provide assistance for people in need. As I mentioned, Recycling for Families is able to provide furniture and home furnishings for a lot of people whom are coming out of homelessness into permanent housing. Also with piecemeals, a lot of those meals go to elderly individuals who maybe aren't able to get out of the house to grocery shop or have the ability to cook. So because we're able to provide funding to agencies like that, they're then able to provide the type of assistance to people who need it the most.
So since even though those things go to individuals, it is serving a public good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Councilmember Crable, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, I think that, you and your office has done a great job, handling so many additional things during COVID. And some things just couldn't be done because of COVID, right? And some of those things that I saw in the Caper report were like elimination of slum and blight conditions, rehabbing rental units or homeowner units. Are those things that you think, looking into the future, that we can kind of improve those numbers?
Definitely. I think that throughout, our strategic plan goals over the next 5 years, I think we'll be able to meet those goals. But I don't think anybody could have, as I said, really estimated what that impact would be with the pandemic. So hopefully, I'm hopeful we'll be able to get caught up. I think the fact that we've already got 3 construction projects underway for the new housing is a good sign that we're headed in the right direction.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bowen.
Yeah, I have a question. These funds are federal or state or
Federal.
local?
Federal.
Federal?
Federal.
They're federal funds.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I don't see anybody else, so I'm gonna go ahead and declare the public hearing closed. It's now at 6:55. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Next item on the regular agenda is a presentation and discussion of priorities and recommendations for associated projects related to city infrastructure and recent storm events. And I just wanted to make a few comments. First of all, I wanted to thank staff for their patience and their expertise working to provide options that the council so that the council can respond to the public's aspirations. I also appreciate the public's patience. I know it's been a couple of months, but I think this is a process that takes a bit of time. We're dealing with very large systems, and it's not easy to have a solution just like that at your fingertips. So staff had to take some time to review some of the information and provide solutions that would be the most adequate. So I definitely want to thank the public for their patience. And I know even though, the solution, I think, is not going to happen necessarily right away, but at least we can put forth a plan in motion and begin to execute. So again, I want to thank you for your patience and like to pass it on to City Manager Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and members of the community. I'm going to share some of the sentiments that the mayor just did share, but thank the elected officials for their patience, allowing us as staff to pull together the facts of this event, pull together the history even before June of this year, and then allowing us the opportunity to provide a staff recommendation, because at this point in this conversation, we have been asked to provide what we feel is the best solution, trying to look at what is going to be the most impactful to the greater community, and then also obviously being good stewards of the taxpayer dollars as a whole. We're going to cover several different areas on this. Go ahead and pull up the first slide, please, Phil. And we're going to cover several different areas, and presenters are going to be Public Works Director Kevin Cothe, Deputy City Manager Billy Tyus is going to have a portion, and then also Corporation Counsel Jeff Jurgens. There's only 15 slides here. Appreciate the audience staying and allowing us to present this to you, in person, and look forward to the conversation afterwards. Again, with this presentation, we're trying to address some of the issues that have been discussed. I know that I've said this before. Locust Colton is a 9-phase project, infrastructure project, and it was set in motion a few years ago. 3 of the 9 phases have been complete. And if we maintain the current rate, completion is targeted at 2029. Something else that we're going to hear about is and you've heard about it in the past, but we're going to highlight a portion of this because we feel that this is the best use of taxpayer dollars, and running parallel to the Locust Colton project is going to provide the greatest impact in a positive way for a larger portion of the community, and that is hydraulic modeling. It was in the 2014 sewer master plan, and that's an area that we're going to highlight and think this will work towards a solution for this issue. Next slide, Phil. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Cothe with the recommendations, and I think slides 3 through 7. Kevin, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager. This is a slide that you'll recognize from prior presentations, but just to review, that part that's red dashed is those phases of Locust Colton that are complete. The orange is currently under construction and has been for the summer. The yellow is phase 3. That design is complete, and we've heard, from the EPA that we're in line for the funding. And so we'll be bidding that in the next few months. That project will, get underway with construction next season. And then the 2 shades of green there, 4 and 5. That's what we've talked about, combining and delivering those at the same time as opposed to sequentially. And then phases 8 and 9 are the 2 shades of purple. That area south of Oakland is 8, and then that area up by the athletic fields just south of Locust is phase 9. So next slide, please. The top of the bar chart there is the original schedule, and the costs there with each phase is the estimated construction costs. And what we've looked at is, the opportunity to combine phases 4 and 5 together, which, phase 4 engineering is currently under contract. Phase 5 engineering, we're working on getting scope and fee put together to bring that to you at a future meeting. And that way we can get the engineering design construction plans put together for phases 4 and 5 to be bid together and deliver that in a sooner time frame. And then, phases 8 and 9, bringing those forward a little bit quicker. And then, basically shaving a few years off the project delivery so that instead of construction complete in 29, construction could be complete at the end of 26. You'll see that the bar charts go a little bit past the end of the year. Well, there's some project closeout that has to happen with those, but in essence, construction would be done then in 26 is the proposed accelerated time frame. Next slide, please. Another thing that was talked about in the 2014 master plan, and there was some hydraulic modeling done at the time, but that core of Bloomington, being able to provide some relief in that core area that goes right through the south end of downtown all the way to the west side of Bloomington. And the first part of this we're suggesting would be to do some additional hydraulic modeling and then move into engineering design and construction documents for what was called Pond 1 in that study. We would think that it'd be appropriate to name as an East Street basin so that everybody can identify with where it's at. And we're working to get a scope of services and fee put together. We estimate that could be 800,000 plus for the scope and the fee for that. And then we'll be targeting getting in front of you in October with an engineering contract for approval. There's other areas that need to be hydraulic modeled to see what solutions might work for those other areas of Bloomington. And we'd be looking at budgeting that in the next budget cycle and pursuing additional hydraulic modeling for those areas to see what could help solve some of the other areas. But the core area, like I said, is kind of along the railroad tracks, the Norfolk Southern line. And, another part of that also involved Pond 2. And next slide, please. And you can see the ovals there where we've got identified just south of downtown to the east of Main Street is the East Street Basin. Pond 2 is over to the northwest, over by between the UP line and Washington Street. That Pond 2, we are working to get a meeting set up with NICOR and their engineers to try to see what the next steps are to be able to work out turning that site potentially into a basin as well. There's other factors involved there because NICOR is remediating the site under an IEPA permit. And so they're also involved in this. So there's some logistics to work out there, but we are pursuing that as well. And we'll see how that goes. But since we own the land there by the East Street Basin, Land Act is not an issue moving forward with that aspect to be done pretty quickly. So the map you see has the triangles as the PMA claims. The circles are the McLean County EMA surveyed locations that people responded to with flooding complaints. And so you can see that core concentration of impacted residences and businesses, really does follow that trunk sewer that is parallel with the Norfolk Southern track through a good section of Bloomington. So if we can, take that water, that excess storm water, and convey it and store it somewhere safely so that it doesn't back up in people's basements, or in some cases, these people also got surface flooding. They got it both ways. So providing relief will do a lot of good for those older parts of Bloomington. Next slide, please. This is a little bit more zoomed in detail map of where we're looking at for Pond 1, which is directly south of the library. It's where the Citizen Convenience Center is located and north of the tracks. That's just the general location of what we're looking at there. So that's the last of my slides. I'll turn it back to City Manager.
Thank you, Kevin. And really, before we move on to the next portion of this presentation, just to recap. Locust Colton, again, is a 9-phase project. 3 phases are already complete. And there had been some discussion or a call of city staff, city leaders to compress that into a 2024, 2025 completion. The costs would be tremendous to try to pull off a feat like that, and to justify that for the benefits, trying to justify that for the greater community. We found that a better investment was also including this hydraulic modeling that we had talked about. And this is not an area that we have a lot of design invested in this up to this point, but we do know this. The area due south of the library and to the southeast is an area that we know that any investment in this regarding hydraulic modeling alongside 2 phases of Locust Colton being compressed, which brings the other 4 phases to construction sooner with a targeted 2026 date. We feel that that is a greater impact and an investment of taxpayer dollars for the entire community, because it pulls water from the east westward, from the southeast to the northeast, to the northwest. And then it adds as a relief for everything that's on the west side of the community. And it's just the first step regarding hydraulic modeling, but we are confident that this, alongside the Locust Colton project, truly is the best investment of taxpayer dollars and is going to offer that relief that we've talked about sooner. Next slide, please, Phil. And this portion is going to be done by Deputy City Manager Tyus. Billy?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. One of the things that, as we've talked about the enormous amount of work that's going to be happening over the next several years, is how do we figure out how to not let the process get in the way of keeping the work moving, with certain limitations, obviously. So as part of that conversation, our legal department, our public works department, and others worked to put together what will be what we're calling an expediting ordinance, where it would move approvals for certain water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure improvements through the process faster. And what it does is that under certain limited circumstances, as you can see, it authorizes the mayor and the city manager to jointly approve certain agreements. For example, construction plans and drawings or agreements, designs and evaluations and agreements for land acquisitions that would be necessary for the work that we're going to be doing. It allows the mayor and the manager to sign off on those jointly. And one of the things it does is that it allows us to not have to be at the mercy of schedules, of meeting schedules, I'll say it that way. Here's the thing, it's only for those items that you would have already approved as part of the budget process. So there are things for which you would have already approved the funding for, first of all. The other thing that it is that we still have to follow rules for procurement and bidding, et cetera, et cetera. So we still follow those rules. It just allows in certain circumstances for the mayor and the manager to sign off on some of these agreements. One of the things that we believe is that I'm sorry, excuse me. One of the things that I forgot was that the manager will also be required to return to you once those things have occurred, to report back to you during an open meeting that those things have been signed off on if approved. Next slide, please, Phil. One of the things we also discovered during our conversations is that we've had an overhead sewer program for some time, but unfortunately there wasn't an awareness of it, first of all. And second of all, it wasn't highly used, maybe in part because people weren't aware of it, frankly. So one of the things that we expect as we move forward is that more people will use the program. And so in seeing that, we are going to recommend that we increase funding to $250,000 for the program versus the current $40,000. The other thing is that Like I said, we expect that there will be more usage, but we don't know. So we would recommend the increases going forward in increments of $250,000 based on usage, just so that there is appropriate funding for the program if people choose to use it. One of the other things that we are recommending is we currently provide up to $4,500 for the projects. Instead of that singular dollar amount, we're recommending covering 2/3 of the project costs. Again, with some limitations, you wouldn't be able to cover everything, but going to a percentage method versus the $4,500 cap. One of the reasons for that is that the cost of these projects can vary greatly based on what we find when we're on site and the work starts, or the work is being proposed to start. Some projects will be more costly, some projects will be less costly. And so doing a percentage of the cost versus this dollar amount, we feel is more equitable to people who maybe have higher cost projects versus some who maybe have some of the smaller ones. The other thing is that even with that, we're investigating and going to suggest we allow for an installment program to pay for residents to pay the rest of those costs. And here's why. Even though the city would be covering 2/3 of the project costs with certain limitations, even some of these smaller dollar amounts that are left to the resident can be a big bite to take for some residents. I mean, some folks frankly can't afford it. So how do we make it easier for people to use the program? And one of the things that we would recommend in going forward is to maybe have an installment program to allow for residents to pay in installments for the rest of the funding, either through your traditional program or even potentially as part of a property tax bill if that's allowed. That way, it's a part of the bill that people get every year, and that cost could be broken up into monthly installments that would be added to a property tax bill and/or, as I said, through your traditional installment program. Thank you.
Next slide, Phil. And as we transition, this will be the slide that Corporation Counsel Jeff Jurgens is going to walk through. But this is regarding public purpose, public funds. This is a conversation that we've had in a variety of meetings and behind the scenes with the elected officials. What you've seen up to this point is the charge from the elected officials, come up with a solution. Is there a better way? Also, find a way to provide that support. And you've seen that in the special bulk waste pickups that we've done as a community. You see this with some of the things that the deputy city manager just did present. But the idea of the city, and I'll describe it this way. It's been described this way in the past, and I'll just follow the suit. The city is a checkbook. Opening that checkbook, whether it's American Rescue money, whether it's cash reserves for the city, is it permissible to write a check to residents to cover costs related to the storm damage? While we cannot say it is illegal, and Jeff Jurgens will get into this deeper, it is an area that we would fully expect to be challenged by other members of the community that you're using taxpayer dollars in that way. If it was challenged, if we did this, if that was the marching orders that I got from this council as city manager to set up this program, and it was challenged and we went into court, basically we would hang our hat on 90, 100-year-old case law, and that's what we would try to use to defend ourselves. We may not be successful, given the examples that we would cite are so old. Also, you do not see this kind of activity out of a municipal or a county government regarding public funds. So wanted to share that. This was very much a topic that we needed to cover, and tonight was the night for that. And Jeff, please continue.
Thank you, City Manager. And just, I guess, to start off and to piggyback on some of that, we first looked, there are all these ideas and different discussion to what type of programs could we come up with to help these residents that are in need. And so, and direct aid being one of those types of ideas, went to the municipal code, tried to see if there are any programs kind of built in that we could build upon or that we could utilize. Did not find anything there. So then we come to what the city manager is talking about in terms of, okay, if we're going to create our own type of program, is it serving a public purpose, which is what we are tied to when we're expending public funds. And so have done some research into that, still working on a lot of those issues, but wanted to share, and the slide up there gives some of the highlights of, the different legalese when you do some research on public purpose, what you're looking at in terms of, it really has to be to further that public purpose. And it can only, the private benefit can only be incidental. So all of this is a fancy way, or maybe a long way of saying, if a program like that is going to be developed by the council will need to identify and define the public purpose. And so that is something that would encourage the council to look at and to work on if that is something that is desired. Without there being other, direct cases on point, without there being a program in the statutes on something like this, I've sometimes talked about this as looking like a spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum, you've got where it's a very clear public purpose. Say, for example, when the city did the bulk cleanup after the initial flooding event, when you're serving that purpose of the health and sanitation and general welfare of the public. I think that's a very clearly identifiable public purpose that is very defensible. On the other end of the spectrum, maybe you've got some sort of reimbursement for furniture or something like that. Is that serving a public purpose, or is that serving more of a private purpose? And that's, if the program was going to look like that, that's where we would have to get into the clearly definable public purpose. And I think as was discussed some tonight, there are a lot of different things. And up here, it talks about the customary use. Sometimes courts will look at that. There are a lot of different functions that the city does and that the city uses, programs that it offers. And so certainly things like that can be looked at. But at the end of the day, the council will have to come up with, and we'll have to define what is that public purpose and make sure that the private benefit is only incidental. So that is basically all I've got on that.
We have 5 more slides. Next slide, please, Phil. And then before I turn this over to the deputy city manager, this was also a highlight of council. Find the assistance that's available. There's quite a few, there is quite a bit of assistance that is already out in the community. We think that we have found a couple of opportunities that we're extremely excited about as staff sharing this with the community. Something else that I'll say in these conversations that started, a little bit more than 2 months ago is I think all of us have watched the national and international events regarding weather. We purposely have spoke very little about this. I mean, there was relevance and it fit in some of the conversations that we've had, but we did not talk about everything that was occurring everywhere else, because at the end of the day, this is about the city of Bloomington. This is about the Bloomington residents. And the elected officials made it very clear in our presentations as staff to the community, to them and the community, that this was about trying to find what we can offer our Bloomington residents. So I'm excited to turn this over to the deputy city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Gleason. One of the things that, as the manager said, that we wanted to make sure we did was reminded the public of some of the assistance that has been available, but also that in some cases is still available for people who may still be in need. Next slide, please, Phil. I think a lot of folks are aware of the SBA disaster loans. And we wanted to remind residents that the SBA loans are still being accepted. And this is a great resource for some, not for everyone, but for some. I also think it's worth noting that there's been more than 1.2 million in aid given, and that's not an insignificant amount. I think it's important to outline that these loans are helping a lot of people in our community and providing a lot of funding to our community. The Realtors Relief Foundation, I believe this is a conversation the mayor had with this organization, and they wanted to help. And so we would recommend that people, if they have a need for assistance, contact them. I'm not certain of the funding levels that are allowed, but there's an email address on the slide that people can reach out if they're interested and in need of assistance. Next slide, please. A couple of other programs, and I won't read all of them, obviously. The Salvation Army has always done a lot of great work for communities across the nation. Nicor Gas in Ameren, Illinois, the Mechanical Assistance Program. They will provide an assessment of some of the HVAC systems in people's homes, water heaters, sewers, et cetera, furnaces. And based on those assessments, income qualified individuals can ultimately receive help in replacing furnaces and water heaters. And specific to flood affected customers, central air conditioners could also be replaced. So again, another program that's out there that's available that people may not know about. Next slide, please, Phil. There's three programs there, but a particular note, I believe, is the Illinois Baptist Disaster Relief Agency. I think that's been one of the unheralded sources of assistance in our community. They traveled from around the state to come and help people who are in need at no charge. They helped with the removal of some of the debris that had to be removed from people's homes, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think it's worth mentioning that. The manager also mentioned earlier the city's bulk waste pickup program. Again, it is a source of direct assistance where we disposed of nearly more than 2 million pounds of debris that had been damaged by flooding. And again, you can see the total cost on the screen as well. Finally, one of the things that we have been working to determine, that's not on the screen, is for the last 3 years, we have participated in a program through the Illinois Housing Development Authority. You should have an email that I sent late today. Is the Illinois Housing Development Authority Single Family Rehab Program. And it's designed to assist low and very low income residents, not just persons who may have experienced funding, but people who experience flooding. I apologize. It's not just for persons who experience flooding, but persons who experience flooding who met certain stipulations would be eligible. And the funding is designed to provide rehab projects to make repairs that replace costly maintenance items to remove health and safety hazards, which I would think in some of these cases, that is the case in some of the homes. We believe that with the funding that you approved tonight for us to receive, plus funding from past years that is not yet allocated or in process, et cetera, we could have roughly $640,000 to assist low to very low income residents with housing rehabilitation needs. And again, I'd ask for some level of patience as we work through the ins and outs of how we can utilize the funding, et cetera. But we think this is a very positive thing to have discovered, as it can go towards helping some of the folks who are low income or very low income. Again, people would need to meet HUD standards for income for household size, and but those levels aren't as low as you may think. And so more to come on that, but we think it's a positive that we have been able to identify the possibility of utilizing that funding.
Thank you, Billy. And the last slide, Phil, and I've just got a few more comments. Real quick on the IDA opportunities that the deputy city manager was talking about. That really does speak specifically to, in part, Alderwoman Ward's council initiative. And then also, the desire and the wishes of many of the council members as well. So that was one that there's more information to follow. But that's over $600,000 that if you fit the financial criteria, it will go to repairs. And it definitely does apply, not specific to a storm event, but the repair portion is definitely something that would apply. Also, in the conversations that we've had with, state elected officials, so we have 4. We have 2 state senators, we have 2 state representatives, and then also with the governor's administration through our lobbyist, through the mayor. Having conversations, we have explored countless opportunities to see if there was any relief at the state level. CDBG is one area that we talked about. Is there additional funding that could be received in addition to the city's allotment that we have already received? And the answer to that is no. We did not necessarily think that we would have that opportunity, but there are no other additional allotments that would be allowed. Something else that we've looked at with the Locust Colton project and many other infrastructure projects, there's only a certain portion of allotment that goes to each of the individuals every year. And currently that interest rate is 1.1% interest rate for this. It's very desirable. Going to the open market, is only 1.8%. But when you're talking about borrowing hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, 0.7% on a loan is something that can add up. And that is an ongoing conversation, and feel confident that we can capitalize on that with the compression, even with the compression that we're suggesting in tonight's presentation. And then Representative Dan Brady, I think everybody knows that, his passion for the community, born and raised here, and he seems to be everywhere. And that's just what he does. He along with other state representatives in a state budget a couple of years ago, got a $600,000 grant administered through DCEO, Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Now, while this would, it's intended to benefit just his ward, he has shared with the mayor, myself, and others that any greater use for the entire Bloomington community, he's open to repurposing that DCO grant. So these are things that are in play, and very much appreciate the partnership with him and others as well. Future action items. There are no action items that come tonight. This was a presentation with staff recommendations. And then in 2 weeks from now, the expedited ordinance will come on the 27th. The overhead sewer program budget amendment will come on the 27th of September. And then the other 3 of 5 future action items that the deputy city manager mentioned will come in October. And with that said, I think that is the last slide, isn't it, Phil? We will turn this over, Mayor and Council, for questions, comments, and very much appreciate everyone's time and patience.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Again, want to thank staff for doing a great job under very difficult circumstances. So, and coming up with some items for us to consider. And before I turn it over to council, I know this was a lot of information. And I just want to be sure that everyone gets an opportunity to ask their questions. So I would ask, if you have maybe 1 or 2 questions, sure, we can go ahead. And then after that, individually, and others can kind of ask questions as well. So let's see. Okay, Councilmember Crable.
Oh, me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Okay. And you're saying just ask a few questions and then come back?
Yeah, by a few, I mean 1.
Well,
and then we can kind of go around. So everybody gets a chance to ask questions.
Okay. Okay. I got to decide which one to ask.
I know, like the kid in the candy store.
So just to kind of confirm on Locust Colton, we're doing work this year. We're set to do work next year. And it looked like from one of those slides that it's almost a 3-year reduction in time, what's proposed. Because actually it's currently projected, I saw the first 2 quarters of 2030 in that. So we would be reducing the time by 3 years. And then I'll just ask right now, can you explain a little bit more like how a detention pond is going to help a homeowner have a less chance of a water? Where's that water going to go? How is it going to get from the homeowner's away from the homeowner's house to this detention pond?
Yeah, east side has a lot of detention and obviously separated sewers. The core of town doesn't have that much for detention. One of the things you gotta realize is that the combination sewer, it works fine as long as it's not raining hard. That's when you have the problem. So if we can get the water instead of into the combination sewer where it surcharges it, get it safely to route to detention basins like the east side has, we can alleviate the flooding that comes from the, basement or the combined sewer surcharging into people's basements by trying to get that storm water to go to basins and be released. Ultimately, to have a separate pipe all the way to the west side of town would be the goal, but you can only do that in certain steps. So the idea here is to get the water to that basin and then release it slowly back into the combined sewer system after the main storm has passed. So the goal is, and that's exactly what the basins do, is they take that peak. I showed a hydrograph in one of the presentations in August. They take that peak off the storm by storing it in the basin and releasing it slowly. So the goal here is not just the basin, but also getting pipes that can convey that water to the basin and release it slowly.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll hold my questions.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Ward.
Mr. Jurgens, thank you for offering more clarity on public purpose. And I wonder, my question has to do with that. I think it's been established, it seems like, that eliminating homelessness, eliminating hunger, eliminating slum and blight, dealing with historic preservation and so forth seem to serve the public purpose. Can you speak to, and perhaps Deputy City Manager Tyus could weigh in on this as well, but could either of you speak to the idea of how the overhead sewer program, given that it would be grants made to individuals, how those would also serve the public purpose, and where that fits into the picture?
Certainly, and I'll start if that's all right, Deputy City Manager. I think it first starts because it's an infrastructure project. So I believe within the plans of the city, ultimately would like to address the overhead sewers. This is one way to address them. It's an infrastructure project associated with the city's infrastructure. And so although it's helping to reimburse the homeowner to do that, as opposed to the city going in and doing that. And feel free.
That's exactly right. And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but an overhead sewer program, I believe, also helps the entire drainage system in that it helps to direct water into the places that it's supposed to go. It helps to improve the entirety of the system. I may not be saying that correctly.
Well, it does provide relief in a different way than, like the detention basin would. And it provides, in a lot of cases, a more quicker, relief to the issue of basement backups.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Just one.
Okay, promise, just one. Would something that affects public health in the midst of a pandemic, when our hospitals are overloaded with other patients, right? There's already pressure on hospitals and a limited number of beds in hospitals. Would something that improves public health be a public purpose, arguably?
Yeah, generically, I think so. I mean, you'd have to look at the details of specifically what you're talking about. But generically, when you're talking about public purpose, you're talking about things that are for the public good. They are, a lot of times public health related, general welfare, getting people out of poverty, keeping people safe, the core needs of the city, streets, infrastructure, things like that. those are a lot of times kind of the common public purpose things, if that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes, this is a question for Deputy City Manager Tyus. I was really interested in the resources that you talked about, you know, that might provide individuals who have been devastated by this flooding. And the last one, and I don't know if I'm going to get the name right, but it's the Illinois Housing Fund, the $600,000.
Illinois Housing Development Authority.
Right. And I realize that you're just beginning to sort of explore that and find out what the criteria are and how it might work. But I'm really wondering, in your estimation of looking at it so far, would that be a fund that might help support some of our neighbors from Eastgate and the West Side who've spoken so passionately in these last few meetings? Would that be something that they could apply to in hopes of getting some support for the devastation that's been done to their homes?
Well, our current levels of funding are designated for low income to very low income individuals. So if individuals met those qualifications, then absolutely. Again, a lot of that is going to be income dependent. Now, there may be other IDA programs, and I don't know for sure, maybe Melissa does, but there may be other IDA programs that we can investigate to see if that might be a possibility for other programs. But our current programming is for low income to low moderate income individuals. And again, if individuals meet those qualifications, then they could absolutely be eligible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Motney.
I have a question for Kevin. Looking at the map of the Locust Colton project, if your street is in one of the colors that was on your chart as accelerating through the 3, 4, and 5, if your street is addressed on that chart by 2024, does that address the concerns for that particular street? So in other words, like as I'm looking at your drawing, 4, 5, and 3, 4, and 5 are really that Eastgate subdivision. And then 8 and 9 are the exteriors where I understand it has to do maybe more with the EPA concerns that we're addressing to longer term. I'm just wondering on behalf of those residents that are here from Eastgate, if what I saw, which says that should be potentially done in 2024, will make a direct impact in solving the root cause of the challenges in that particular subdivision.
It's going to help, but until the full separation is done, then there's still an opportunity for a backup. In other words, 8 is south of Oakland. That is upstream from those properties. While they're off on a branch, there is still the chance that because it's still hooked into a combination system, there is still a chance that there could be backup again. Once the separation is complete through the whole system, then it's a separate system. But as long as it's still hooked together to the same pipes, there may be 2 pipes in the street now. And, you know, there'll be a storm sewer pipe, sanitary sewer pipe. It could still, the whole system could back up until the system's completely separated.
Okay, thank Councilmember Bolin. I was just mesmerized by Kevin.
Yeah, I want to address some of the public funding issues or questions. Most of the public funding that was mentioned in the presentation is either state or federal funding is my understanding. And I think that we need to focus on the proper use of municipal funding, since we can't really print money locally. And I have in front of me here I went and looked up some of the information regarding local funding, and it's let's see. I'll read this little section. If, however, the dominant motive is to promote private purpose, the expenditure will be invalid even if incidentally some public purpose also served. And then what constitutes public purpose? Let's see. It is required for the general good of the inhabitants of the city, and it is not directed at individuals. And then as far as grants or gifts from the city, from the municipal government, it says that money should not be appropriated to persons whose situations may appear to public sympathy, which in some ways I view this to be. I certainly feel for the people that have had flooding in their basements, but I think that legally, there is some limitation as to how municipal funds can be used. So I just want that to be clear for the people sitting in the audience. And we as a city can put packages together, which were presented here. But I think that we need to be very careful and honest with the citizens of this community that maybe it will not be really legal, or it will put the city on not solid ground moving forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Emig.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to go back to the basin pond, and I just want to know more specifically if you can articulate how that project might be related to green infrastructure, or what we could intend to experience, right, if you create this huge swath of water at that part of our community. And if, in light of a lot of legislation around creating green jobs and looking at a lot of really interesting design metrics in other communities to deal with these combined sewer problems that are more expedient, less expensive, and environmentally friendly. Can you draw a relationship between what this basin can be and how it can be a mixture of that green and gray infrastructure that's so important?
Yeah. And, we'll obviously, employ a consultant who, has some experience with both, the hydraulic modeling and also basin design and green infrastructure. So we'll try to incorporate what components we can. And, a surface basin like this would be designed for stormwater to come to it. And, we haven't designed the basin. We don't know exactly what it looks like yet. But, there's an opportunity there. Potentially this is a wet bottom basin, that could be a feature. I mean, this area is currently the Citizens Convenience Center and a public works yard, but, potentially is an amenity just south of the library. I mean, it could, it backs up to the trail. It could be a nice amenity, not only functioning as a stormwater and flood control, but also potentially a nice amenity to an area of town that frankly doesn't have that much for parks or, green space. Of course, the trail is a great amenity to town, cuts through there, but it's kind of stark as you walk through an area that's mainly kind of an industrial at that point. But we'll certainly look at any opportunities we can to, besides it being somewhat green, to incorporate green infrastructure components as we go through the process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember Matthew.
Yep, thanks, Kevin. I wanted to go back to the detention basin idea again. You and I and Bob had a conversation after the committee of the whole meeting for August, and I said, we need to understand which order of all the things that could be done are going to have the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time. And one of the things that you came back with was the detention basin. Because ultimately the flooding was caused by the sheer amount of water coming from the upstream parts of town, on the top of the hill, pushing down low, right? It makes sense. Water goes from high to low. And then when it ran into an area where there was so much water, there was nowhere else for it to go. That pressure is what caused the backup into all the basements, right? So the idea behind the detention basin, where you're talking about at the Citizens Convenience Center, would catch or give a different route for a lot of that stormwater to go by capturing into the basement, into the basin. A lot of the basins have a huge inlet emptying in there, but a very small outlet going out. So we change the pressure and move the water out of the normal flow and move it into an area where we can control it a little bit better, right? That's the basic principle of what we're talking about here. So the whole area, a large part of Ward 1, two big parts are along the Fremont Street area in Sodom, and then along Oakland Avenue are in the route of the water routes of what we're talking about right now. So potentially we could drain not all of it, but a lot of the water into a usable place or a manageable position to keep it from backing up in that area. That's kind of the goal of what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, very well stated. Alderman
Okay.
Mathy.
And then we're gonna theoretically, we want to try to do the same thing on the west side by potentially creating a second basin to capture the water that's rolling from the hill upstream side of Ward 7 and rolling down, because everything ultimately is trying to move to the west side. And we just want to capture the water and control the water better than we have the capability to now. So I just wanted to say thank you for pushing the hydraulic modeling and the basin idea forward. We know that we want to finish Locust Colton, but I think that this has the potential to benefit more homeowners at a faster pace than we can finish the very complex work of CSO elimination. So I just want to say thank you to you and everybody on the team that kind of brought this idea forward, because this is, we've all been doing a ton of research and reading, and I shared with the rest of City Council I actually found plans where Japan is having this exact same issue. So when we were building CSO, combined sewer stormwater systems in the United States, Japan was doing the exact same thing. And I found a Japanese manual with diagrams that are almost exactly identical to what you showed us of where the problems are, why it happens. And the detention basin system is exactly, it was one of their primary strategies for moving water to where they could control it while they were working on other systems, which were going to take a lot longer to implement. So thank you for all your work, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthew. Councilmember Becker.
Jamie kind of hit what I wanted to, and I just wanted to clarify for everybody out here that's listening. I know some were conceptually, the idea of the basin seemed contradictory to what you wanted. And the idea that Locust Colton is the full solution, and it's not. It's a big part of the solution, but the basin and the other things that we can do must be put together with it to get the maximum impact. So I just want to encourage people that this gives you the best possible outcome between now and 2024, as I understand it, that we can achieve. There's still work to do after that, but this does give the best possible outcome, given all things put together, from what I understand. Kevin, do you agree?
I think it's, a very positive step moving forward to help more than just one neighborhood, but addressing, neighborhoods across the city. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. You may go ahead.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I just want to make something clear. The public purpose doctrine is something in the Illinois Constitution, correct, Jeff?
That is correct.
So it not only applies to municipalities, it applies to state government as well.
That is correct.
So if Representative Brady is going to, give some of the money he's allotted for disaster victims he's got to make sure it's a public purpose, right?
Let me jump in here. I don't want to offer any confusion. I mean, there are guidelines on this TCO grant and it's infrastructure related. And I should have been clear, I would imagine, in my previous comments. So that's what Representative Brady is saying. Anything that's going to serve the city of community better, but it has to be infrastructure related.
Okay. And going to the Illinois Housing Development Authority, right? Again, those funds that they make available to improve people's homes based on health, sanitation reasons, that's got to comply with the public purpose doctrine because it applies to the state.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And so while I like the idea that Deputy City Manager Tyus talked about and is exploring, I would not see why we could not individually as a city add to that using the same criteria, because if it's a public purpose for the IHDA, it would also be a public purpose for the city. A couple of other points. Let's see. So on the detention pond, some was referenced 2024. Is that when we think we would hope to have it completed?
We'll move as quickly as we can. Whether it could actually be completed by 24 might be more likely to match completion with the other phases of Locust Colton in 26.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at. Okay. And then I think you talked about this a little bit. So each phase of the Locust Colton that's completed improves everything a little bit.
It helps those neighborhoods a little bit, but not everything isn't completely done until it's fully separated. Then that's the big benefit. Yes.
And I'll finish with one specific question that'll help a question a resident had. So if a street, let's say Grant Street is on whatever phase, right? It's marked with a yellow, red, blue, whatever line. Does that mean it's going to help both sides of the street? Does that make any sense?
If you're referring to like markings in the field, or are you talking about the map?
Well, just the work, the Locust Colton work, is that going to help people on both sides of the street?
That's a little bit of a loaded question from the standpoint that some of those neighborhoods have the sewers in the street.
Right.
Sometimes it's in the backyard. So depending on the phase and stuff determines whether it's the backyard sewer that's being helped or the street side sewer being helped. But like when you talk about markings in the street, that typically is when they're doing survey work, picking up the utilities and everything for the design. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any other questions, so thank you very much, Kevin. Okay, so our next item on the agenda is city manager's discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a few slides. Welcoming week. I know that there was a proclamation earlier this week or earlier in the session, but wanted to share that. Then also we'll have a stand again at this upcoming Saturday's Farmers Market. Next slide. Dance classes through the Bloomington Parks. I think Deputy City Manager Tyus has signed up. And next slide. Animal Crackers education classes at Miller Park Zoo. That's 24th and 25th. So that's 2 weekends from now, or the second weekend from now. Next slide, please. Downtown Bloomington Farmers Market. Again, this runs Saturday morning, 7:30 to 12 o'clock, well attended. A lot of appreciation from the residents and the vendors that are represented. I try to go there often myself. Next slide, please. Tour to Chocolate, it's coming up this Friday, and also have incorporated and in memory of Mayor Markowitz and Mayor Buchanan with their recent passing. Next slide, please. And I think the other thing that I'll say additionally is, Saturday was 9/11. It's this generation's Pearl Harbor, and just remembering all those that have been affected by that. And there's many stories right here in Bloomington, Illinois, and very nice event out at the Corn Crib commemorating the 20th anniversary. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda is mayor's discussion, and I want to reiterate the 9/11 event that I attended at the Corn Crib. It was a great opportunity to say thank you, not only to those first responders in the community, but as well as commemorate the individuals who lost their lives on that tragic day. So it was a great event. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that I'm continuing to look at applicants for Ward 6. And by that, I mean that I'm reviewing all of the information that I've received. I had an opportunity to interview all of them, and I certainly appreciate their willingness to step up because it's not easy to be in the public glare. And I may reach out to candidates, if I have additional questions. And I am anticipating, I would like to bring forward a name by September 27th. So that is it. And do we have any council member discussion? Okay, Councilmember Crumpler.
I would just like to say this Sunday, on the 19th of September, First Baptist Church is bringing Catherine Harris, who is a Harriet Tubman reenactor, for presentation at 3 o'clock. She is a nationally known speaker. Will be at Gettysburg later this fall. I was invited, and I would like to reach out to any other council members who would be interested in going. Please contact me, and I can tell you more about it. I think it's going to be a wonderful event. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bolin.
Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Welcoming Week, Welcoming America. At the farmers market on Saturday, it was our first public inaugural event. And several people showed up, and we had conversations with quite a few people from the public. One that really impressed me was a new director at PATH, and she's going to focus on immigrants and their needs in relation to PATH. So I thought that was really great. And the main purpose of the farmers market was just to make public awareness about Welcoming America, what it's about, and to showcase the community coalition of churches and other social agencies, the Immigration Project, the people that have feet on the ground and have been working with the immigrants over the years, and specifically with the challenge of COVID. So that was the purpose of this past Saturday and this coming Saturday at the farmers market. Now, during this week, Tuesday and Wednesday, there will be a free CPR course. On Tuesday, it'll be in Spanish, and on Wednesday, it'll be in French, be held at the Community Health Care Clinic in Normal. On Thursday, the 16th, there's going to be an ice cream social at the Immigration Project in Normal. On the 17th, there will be a virtual immigration trivia. And let's see. And then on Saturday, the 18th, in addition to the farmers market, there will be an Illinois Wesleyan University Language and Cultural Festival at the Illinois Wesleyan University Quad. I can't take credit for any of this. These are all from the community coalition that's doing all the work. And I also went to my first McLean County Behavioral Health Coordinating Council meeting. And I'm just really impressed with all the different initiatives they're putting forward. District 87 is going to have what they call a wraparound program to meet the needs not only of the children, but also the family, put them together because that's where the solution is the entire family. Heartland Community College is training peer resources because people that have gone through and have experienced mental illness or trauma or whatever are the best to understand, to talk to people. And then there's another, it's called CAT. And that too is a team effort to meet the needs of, I believe, 10 to 18-year-old children within the school and to keep them out of the criminal justice system. There's also another youth program specifically for crisis. And McLean County EMS was present, specifically talking about the interaction between the police and people with mental illness. They are very much aware of the CESA legislation that's coming down the pike, and they are working on the details. And what else? Oh, that's in addition to the virtual forum that's held 6 times. There'll be 6 sessions. It's addition to the FUSE program, triage center, trauma-informed initiative, and there will be a neuro restorative school. It'll be coming down the pike on the agenda, located at Fox Creek and Veterans Parkway. It'll be coming before the council in a couple weeks, I believe. So, a lot going on. We should be proud of McLean County. It's ahead of the curve.
Thank you, Councilmember Bolin. Councilmember Eby.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to continue the theme of being ahead of the curve, last weekend was probably the biggest cultural series of events I've ever seen in this community with Make Music Normal and the Black Dirt Festival. Got a little bit of both, and it was really pleasurable. I just want to say quickly to let everyone know, if you don't already, that October 9th is the Ecology Action Center's annual household hazardous waste collection. It's a great opportunity to take care of things that are hazardous in your homes. And they're not asking for donations this year. They are looking for volunteers, however, to help guide the traffic. And you can sign up by appointment only, and just to make sure that the traffic can be regulated. And that worked really well in the last iteration to prevent long waits. Don't bring your latex paint. And it's possible with a partnership with the Illinois EPA, the City of Bloomington, Town of Normal, McLean County, and Benward. And it's just a good example of what we can do if we work in collaboration across all of our municipalities. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Ward.
Yes, I'd just like to remind everyone, especially those who were interested in the discussion on O'Neill Park and Pool, that we do have a meeting, kind of an open house on Thursday evening from 5 to 6:30 p.m. At the O'Neill Park gazebo. In case of rain, it'll be in the White Oak Park Community Room, but the idea is to have some city officials there to answer some questions and give updates on what is going on in terms of phases of construction and so forth. So please put that on your calendar if you have any interest at all in O'Neill Park and Pool.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Crable.
Thank you, Mayor. As many of you may know, recently the Illinois Department of Transportation released data on traffic stops and pedestrian stops for all law enforcement in Illinois. And one of the statistics for Bloomington Police Department was that for traffic stops, a Black person was 6.2 times more likely to be stopped than a white person. So this is a little bit higher than it was last year. I'm sure some of it's COVID related. It's a little bit higher than the state average. It's just a number that needs to be analyzed. But this Thursday as well, at 7 o'clock, the NAACP is having a town hall. It's going to be virtual. And I can share that if you, it's on my Facebook page if you want details of that. I also believe the PSCRB is looking at that. They're going to work with our department just to make sure that if there's anything that needs to be changed, we can change it. So that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Matthew.
Thanks, Mayor. So I just want to share, Saturday, I had the opportunity to have a long conversation with two workers from, well, when they started, it was Bike, and then it was Nestle Bike, then it was Nestle, and now it's Ferrero. And they both worked there over 30 years each. And just, it was really interested to hear from a line worker how excited they were about all the changes that are coming out there. And the new plant, they actually haven't broke ground yet. So just what's happening inside of the plant and the excitement inside of the plant, just under the new ownership. So I just wanted to share that was pretty interesting. And the second thing I wanted to say is I just wanted to say publicly, thank you to my wife for being very generous, because today is our anniversary. And this is the second time I've had a city council meeting on the night of our anniversary. So thank you, sweetie. I love you.
Make sure you bring some chocolate on your way home. Okay. Okay, well, thank you. Our next item on the agenda is executive session. And if I could get a motion for us to enter into executive session per section 2 of C1 of 5 ILCS 120 to discuss a personnel matter.
I'll move.
I'll make
so.
that one. Oh.
Councilmember Bolin, Councilmember Ward. Madam Clerk, do we do this roll call, or are you gonna do?
Yeah, and also just to specify, Jeff did ask me to clarify that it is for compensation and review of a specific employee.
Yes, that.
All right, roll call. Councilmember Matthew,
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin,
Yes.
Councilmember Motney,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig,
Yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Crable,
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yep. So council is entering executive session per section 2 of C1 5 ILSCS 120 to discuss a personnel matter regarding compensation and
Compensation and review of a specific employee.
okay, review of a specific employee. So the room must be cleared like it is now. During executive session, council will resume the open session meeting following executive session. No additional action will be taken except to adjourn regular session. If you guys can remain seated. And do you want to take a break? Okay. Time to roll, Dr. Phil. There you go. Okay. Is there a motion to return to open session?
make that
and for the
motion.
purpose of adjourning?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Bullen, second by Councilmember Ward. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Night, everybody.
We need to have a second.
Second.
They combined it. Is that okay? We're good.
I mean, I don't.
As long as you're an aye, we're all good. There's no
Aye.
nays. Okay. Thanks.